There's really no such thing as the voiceless. There are only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard. A quote by Arundhati Roy. And my guest today, Sangeeta Pillai, is one who chose to be deliberately unsilenced. There are stories that hold strength in their softness. And then there are stories like Sangeeta's that carve through grit, courage, and undeterred intent to rise. Sangeeta's is a fascinating journey that begins with a childhood spent in the narrow alleys of a Mumbai slum to being featured on giant billboards in New York, London, Dublin, Glasgow, and Cardiff. Sangeeta today is a leading voice for South Asian feminism globally, an award-winning podcaster for Masala Podcast, and author of her book Bad Daughter, and founder for South Asian feminism network Soul Sutras. She's been extensively featured in media from BBC Radio, The Guardian, Cosmopolitan, Metro, Stylist, Brown Girl Magazine, Deccan Herald, and Huffington Post. She now lives in London and is in Dubai to promote her book Bad Daughter. I'm delighted that she joins us from the other side to talk about truth, healing, and becoming the woman she needed when she was growing up. Sangeeta, welcome.
Thank you so much for your warmth and your welcome. I'm delighted to be in Dubai, delighted to be in your home. It's an absolute joy, so thank you.
I'm very excited for this conversation. I begin by asking my guests to give us a glimpse of their childhood in the hope that we can connect the dots to their present selves. Your story can possibly not but begin in those narrow alleys of the Mumbai slum where you grew up. What were those experiences like, and how have they gone on to shape the woman you are today?
It's funny, when you grow up in a place, you don't think it's unusual because you think that's the only
That's
unusual,
your norm,
right? So, like you said, I grew up in this tiny slum where the toilets were outside. There was no water, and we had to line up every morning to collect water in these 3 or 4 buckets to go to the toilet, which most people take for granted. You had to queue up in the morning and literally wade through shit, like literal shit, to get to do what every human being does, It was really hard. I didn't know it was hard. It was really, really hard. And my father was an alcoholic. He was very violent. So he battered my mother every night. And I think a lot of times when I tried to sleep, I wouldn't be sure if we would all be alive the next day. And now thinking back, it's the most horrific way for a child to grow.
Certainly.
There was no safety. There was no sense of security. The environment around was really dirty, very filthy physically, but also psychologically, it was very, very difficult. So I think now when I look back, I feel quite sad for my younger self, but I also feel really proud of her that she kind of used that almost as fodder to build this amazing life. So desperately hard, desperately sad, being, seeing your mother battered every night, not sure if she was going to live, you were going to live. But I also feel very, very proud of her.
It's just such a juxtaposition of the fear and hope. And I feel like we grow older and the younger versions of us still keep walking with us, waiting for the day that we can turn around and say, you deserved better, and I will give that to you now. Is this journey of what you have lived through leading up to you writing your first book, Bad Daughter, coming from that space where you have said you deserve better?
Yes, I guess there was never a conscious thinking of you deserve better. But I think at every point in my life, that's who I've been. I think when I used to watch my mother being battered, I said to myself, I will never have that life. I will make sure I will die, but I will not have that life. And so every step, every decision, every movement has been to build something for myself. So I made sure I had the money, or I got a job. I was the first girl in my family to go to university, the first girl in my family to have a job. Nobody before me did, no other women did. So I think everything was ensured subconsciously, none of this was conscious, to kind of move me further and further and further along. So I think I did make sure that that girl had a different experience to the one she was born into, but all of it subconscious. It was none of it. So I do believe in a divine power that helped me and supported me, because without that, I wouldn't have done any of these things. But it was almost like, a lot of people ask me, like, what made you want to do this? And the answer is very much, I always had this inner fire. I always knew that I had to keep pushing and moving and moving and moving. And it just comes from deep within me. And I think it's the divine now when I think about it. Because where else does it come from?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How else can you explain that?
there was nothing around me. There were no magazines, there was no media, there was no social media. Nobody around me was seeing or doing the things that I was seeing and doing. So it has to come from somewhere. So I really feel this now.
Yeah, and I guess when you are in a challenging environment, you don't necessarily have role models either. So who do you model your life on?
Exactly.
But one thing that comes out of this quite evidently is that maybe subconsciously you create a blueprint of what you don't want to settle for in life, right?
Yeah.
In fact, your book, Bad Daughter, starts with the introduction, unapologetically claims that you've been a bad daughter your entire life.
Yes.
Explain that to us. What is the significance of that?
So, as women, and particularly as South Asian women, we are brought up to be good daughters, good sisters, then good wives, then good mothers, then good colleagues. The good goes on and on and on. And if any of us even dares to stray an inch from that very specific role and space we're given, we are immediately labeled bad daughters, right? If you don't follow everything your father says, you're a bad daughter. If you don't do X or Y, whatever each family has. So I decided to just reclaim that for myself. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me this is a bad thing. I'm going to take it and I'm going to make it my own. And I'm going to be a proud bad daughter. Because a bad daughter does what she wants. A bad daughter isn't afraid to use her voice. A bad daughter travels, a bad daughter, whatever,
So you're not standing in that picture and smiling or taking the bus alone. Was that coming from that space of being a bad daughter?
I guess so. The picture is a really funny one. It's in the book. It's when I was 4 years old and taken to this photo studio in the village where we were like Kerala. Like they used to do. There was one photo studio in every village, right? And they put me there and they said, smile. And I refused to smile. And the more they told me to smile, the less I smiled. So there's this picture of me with like very stroppy with a hand on my hip, looking up saying, well, tell me what to do and I'll show you. I was 4 years old. And my mother used to say after that, that's the moment I knew you were going to be trouble. So absolutely, that's what I was modeling for myself.
And Sangeeta, I feel like there's a quiet burden that we all carry. It is the unspoken expectation of a good daughter, the one who complies, the one who handles it all, the one who doesn't ask for too much, right? When I did read the title of your book, Bad Daughter, there was such a sense of, I just felt free and there was a sense of liberation.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think your book does is reminds us that goodness isn't obedience.
Yeah.
Goodness is truth.
Yes.
And the way that we can love ourselves is not by performance, but just by being true to who we are. Just becoming is important than performing.
Absolutely. So much of our energy growing up goes towards fitting these roles. And what is the price we pay when we try and fit in these roles? We deny our own truth, our own voice. We shut ourselves down. When something comes up, say, oh, I don't really want to do that. Or I don't want to say that. Oh, it's okay, just go along, because that's what we're told. And the price we then pay is losing ourselves so much that we don't even hear our voices. What do we want? Who do we want to be? What's that inner self saying to us? What makes us happy? We shut all of that down because we're trying so hard and we've been taught it's not our fault.
It's the
It's
condition.
patriarchal rules, it's conditioning, it's society, it's family, it's all of that. But we lose a lot when we follow this kind of good girl script. We shrink ourselves and we make ourselves small and we fit into these boxes and we lose entirely who we are meant to be. Because if you want to expand and be the full person, that needs space, that needs freedom, that needs, allowing ourselves to voice the things we
Also need
feel.
courage, right?
It needs
So where does a little girl in a slum of Mumbai find that ray of hope and courage?
I don't know where it comes from, but I've always had it. And ever since I was a child, I've always had the fire to follow my own tune, as it were. And I think, like we were saying a moment ago, there's obviously something divine going on
That's
as
true.
well, because I don't think I could have done it on my own. I think I was put on this earth to do this work, to help other women, to voice the people who haven't got a voice yet and gently support them. I think that's my role. So I think I was given this courage by the divine so I would have the ability to then go and help loads and loads and loads of other women. That's what I instinctively feel.
That's so, so powerful. The prologue in your book, Sangeeta, is a letter you write to your younger self, Minnie.
Yeah.
It is powerful, it is compassionate. And while you say to her, this is all right and go burn it all, you also, where does that firstly come from? What did you mean when you said, go burn it?
I meant all the rules. I meant everything that keeps little girls shrunk and voiceless and quiet. And burn all the rules. Burn the rule book, not just the rules, the rule book. Because I'm sure you've experienced this. I certainly have. Every time you try and do something, they tell you, oh, but girls don't do that. You can't do that. If you do that, you're going to end up like this, or no one's going to marry you, or no one's going to talk to you. You'll be alone. All of these are rules that are told to keep little girls, very reinforced, to keep girls quiet, to keep girls shut up, to keep girls in their place because they wouldn't dare then dream of anything or reach for anything. So that's what I meant. Burn the whole damn rule book, not just the rules.
So if Minnie was sitting here with you today,
I love that question.
what would you want her to know about the woman that she has become?
Such a beautiful question. I'm getting goosebumps when I'm answering that. If Minnie were here today, she'll be like kicking her little legs and running around. And I would say to her, our life is more magnificent and more wonderful than you could have imagined in your biggest dreams.
Being on the billboard.
I know, big in London, New York, and London.
Bigger than that.
Rihanna was the week before. I mean, how much bigger does it get? So I would like to say to her that the life you live now is awful and it feels like it will never end. The violence will never end. The pain will never end, but it does. And it not only ends, but it gets better and magnificent and more. And you, little Minnie, will help 1,000 other Minnies, 1,000,000 other Minnies, so that they can be themselves. That's what I would say to her.
And I think that's the most beautiful thing that one can hear as a little girl who seeks hope in despair.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Soul Sutras and Masala podcast. Is this where you want to be the voice for those who are marginalized or perhaps are not able to speak for themselves? Is that the genesis of it?
So, all of the work that I have done has come from a deep intuition. At no point have I sat down and made a business plan or made any sort of plan, really. Even Soul Sutras, I thought of the name, I liked it without thinking too much. And now I know it's the soul's journey. It's only now that I recognize why I chose that name, right? And the podcast I ran, before the podcast came Masala Monologues, which was like a South Asian version of Vagina Monologues. I ran a lot of workshops for women, about 20 of them the first year in London. Then I turned those workshops into 2 theatre shows. We did 2 theatre shows in East London.
But tell us a little bit about these workshops. What are they about?
So they were getting South Asian women together, getting them to talk about a taboo, a cultural taboo. So a lot of taboos in our culture.
Yes.
We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about sex. We don't talk about periods. We don't talk about menopause. There's just a lot of things. Oh, we don't speak.
We just don't go there.
We just don't go there. So the point was to get the women to write it out, to find a story in their own life where one of these taboos had affected them. And I would coach them, because I was fundamentally a writer, on how to structure that story, how to make it emotionally resonant, how to have a beginning, middle, and end.
Yes.
And they would read it out at the end of the workshop. So I did 20 of these workshops.
And must be a cathartic experience, right? I mean, you're just releasing those pent-up emotions which perhaps no one's scared to address before.
Yeah.
Maybe you've not had the courage to do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very emotional, and a lot of women would come and hug me and say that I've never thought about even talking about it. So thank you for creating this space. And as the facilitator, my role was to make it safe. And also with everything, I am very open. I talk about my own stuff. I talk about my mental health. I talk about the first time I got my periods. So I'm very open, which then encourages them to feel safe enough to write.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of shape of the workshops. And I did them over 2 years, I think it was. And there were so many amazing stories, so many powerful stories, so many personal stories that I thought I should do something with this. They're just stories sitting here.
Right.
And that's when I thought about doing it as a theatre show. I worked with a director and a producer, and we got professional South Asian actors who have now gone on to be like really big. I see them on screen all the time and all that, which is really cool. But it was their first job. And we had the show in East London, in Richmix, which is this tiny little little theatre in East London. And about 100 odd people came, and it was really amazing. And they were really moved. There were tears, and there was hugs, and there was all of this beautiful stuff.
So true.
So that's how the first one started.
I hope I can see it someday.
That would be amazing. I'd love to revive it, and I think it would be wonderful to have that happen again. Absolutely.
Moving on, just again, the book. There's one chapter that really stirs your soul as a reader, which is an account of your mother's brutal murder. How did you process that?
Really great difficulty. And to be very honest with you, I think that's one trauma I haven't fully processed. And I'm not sure I've come to, when I was finishing the book, that was the chapter I couldn't get myself to write. I wrote the whole book, and I went back to my editor and I said, look, I've finished the first draft, but I just cannot physically write. It's too painful. And so she said to me, either write the whole thing or just decide not to have it. And I said, I can't not have her story. She is crucial to my life.
Would you tell us a little bit about
So she was, I won't go into the details because it's too painful.
No, absolutely.
But she was murdered. So, and this is in 2003. And horrific
in Mumbai.
In Mumbai. Horrific kind of murder. And I talk about it in the book. And it was so brutal and so violent that it kind of just completely upended all our lives. I've got 2 brothers and myself. And the horror of it was so much that I think I just dissociated, because I think it was too much for one human being to...
How old were you?
I was 30s, I think. Yeah, something like that. So 2003, my maths is really bad, but
No problem.
something around my 30s. And to me, one was the sheer brutality was difficult, but also for me, the sadness, which I still have, is she had an awful, awful life. I can't make any sense of it, where her childhood wasn't very happy. Her marriage was horrific because she was married to my father and he beat the living daylights out of her. And then she died like this, so it's taken a lot of my spiritual understanding almost to sort of accept the way her birth and her life and her death happened. And I guess the only way I can kind of make any sense of it is to say that maybe that's again the fuel that drives me to do this work. Because I think when she had no ability to get out of a marriage, she didn't have any financial independence, she didn't have a voice, I decided to be that voice. And I think that's how I've made sense of it for myself.
Kudos for you to be able to assimilate what happened and make something that is for the larger betterment of women. There's also an emotional climax in the book that I gathered, which was when you go back to Kerala. What is that about?
So it's such an interesting thing, this, where all my life I rejected Kerala, saying it's really patriarchal, it's really this. And I'm from Bombay. I'm a Mumbaiker, right? And up until about 3 years ago, so I went on a massive healing journey over the last 6, 7 years. And the genesis of my work is very much part of my healing, right? I had huge mental health issues, which I talk about in the book, and almost a breakdown. And it all came because I hadn't addressed these big traumas that happened in my life. And it forced me again, that's the best thing that could have happened. Like, I know it's a terrible thing to so talk about a breakdown, but it really forced me to like quit the job in advertising that I did and start the Masala monologues and the podcast and all of it. And I went on this healing journey. I went to therapy like most people do. And it was useful to a degree. And I realized that it's not going to really help me heal. It shows me why I feel the way I do, but it doesn't help me heal. So into this massive other alternative journey, I tried hypnotherapy, craniosacral therapy, acupuncture, tantra, EMDR, lots of things, all of which are in the book. And the reason I've written them in the book is so people know that there are other ways to heal.
Yeah, there are
and they
different
can
modes of
explain-
branding.
Yeah, different ways. But then I did some work with this tantra healer, and she was the one who said, you need to go back to your roots. And then I was like, really, damn. So I went on these massive trips to Kerala, 3 months one time, 3 months another time. I traveled up and down the land. I went to the beaches and the backwaters and the hills and cities and all of it. And I felt a real connection. And I felt this connection because I'd done all the healing work. So I was open. But before I'd gone, I didn't feel any of it.
Because you were not ready.
I wasn't ready to accept it, I think. And therefore, it wasn't revealed to me. And now when I go and I spend months, I'm again going for 3 months, I go to the temples, I go to the rituals, and I feel this energy, which is, I walk into certain temples, particularly connected to the family, and I start to cry for no reason. And when I listen to the chenda, the drums, my body starts to like vibrate. And I sometimes can't quite believe it. I used to be one of these people, I'd laugh like, yeah, all this woo-woo stuff and all of this. I never believed in any of this. And now I'm like a living, breathing example. So Kerala has been the biggest healing factor in my journey, going back to my roots.
Yeah, and I think as we grow older, we start to appreciate the fact that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
100%.
Right?
100%.
Because you can feel it is enough evidence that it does.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh goodness. And there is one account that you mentioned where you're on a flight and you get the news that your dad has passed away. And that's when you have your breakdown?
So breakdown happened before that.
Right.
So this was about, 2 years after the breakdown. And this was like meant to be a career highlight. I had been invited by University of Berkeley in California. They flew me there to record a podcast and do workshops with their students. So I was like on a high. And I'd also just spoken at the Women of the World Festival, which is a very big festival. And this was March, 2020, March 2020. So I flew out there, was flying high. And then I got a call from my brother to say, Dad's just died. And COVID kicked off at the same time. They were locking down California. So I had to get on a flight and leave. Otherwise, I would be in California. And that flight was just awful because I was there and I was like, didn't know what to do with all of these feelings because there was grief, but the grief was for myself, the childhood that I never had, the father that I never had.
Right.
And then feeling all these conflicting emotions. And I was kind of sobbing through the flight and I was a mess. I was a real mess. But, that's what happens. That's sometimes what healing looks like. People think healing is like floating off to Bali with a white, whatever. It's not.
And it is in the most unexpected,
The most inconvenient places is when healing comes.
Yeah.
But we just have to say yes and just sit and cry and process and deal.
Allow yourself that.
And allow yourself that space, It's very, very important. So that was a really tough flight.
Yeah, and I think one's got to have the grace to see it in that way, right?
Exactly.
Because often we could lament about everything that has gone wrong with our lives and feel as if we've been shortchanged. But then in retrospect, when you do look at it from the prism of the fact that whatever has happened for you and not to you, it's just such a shift of perspective.
Huge, absolutely. Because otherwise what can happen is we can spend our own life woe is me, what a sad thing happened. Oh my God, because of that sad thing, I'm doing all of these other things.
And I also think, Sangeeta, the one thing that we've got to be very careful is when you've lived a challenging or a traumatic childhood, is to save yourself from romanticizing it.
Yes.
Because just as much as we don't want to be carried away with, and again, it's a bit of a South Asian mindset that don't celebrate your success too much. I also think we mustn't romanticize our despair too much.
100%.
And we need to be cognizant that maintaining a balance is what it is about. It has
100%.
happened.
Yes.
You had to go through that experience. Bad daughter.
Yes.
Because good girls don't change the world. How is bad daughter you're hoping change the world?
I'm hoping that a lot of women read this, South Asian women, but all women read this and know that there is always a choice. Know that what they're being told, like this is the only way forward, may or may not be the truth. Also, and this is the most important bit, they know that it doesn't matter what happens to you. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what's happened. You can still create the life you want. You can still go ahead and forge exactly the life you want. It is all possible. I can do it, so can you. That's what I want them to know.
And I think that's the most valuable lesson that we must all carry with ourselves. So a girl that grew up in a slum in Mumbai makes it to advertising as a writer, moves to London hoping to be a lot more free.
Yeah.
Is that what the plan was? But that isn't quite what happens. What happens?
So the girl moved to London and had this dream of this life of advertising and all that. And it was great. You know, the advertising world helped me get my own flat. And I had this amazing life, drinking Prosecco on the weekends. And
I believe you had a great view.
I still have an amazing view. Live in a flat overlooking the canal.
Oh, beautiful.
And I see swans go by as I drink my tea in bed in the morning. It's just glorious. But I think life had other plans. I think I was meant to do other things. And that's when the kind of breakdown came, and the best thing that ever happened. And that's when I started to run the workshops. That's when I started to do the podcast. That's when the Spotify competition happened. All of it came from there. So life had much better plans for me.
And we are so glad because if we are at the receiving end, we aren't complaining.
Thank you.
Sangeeta, I would love to know, and I ask this to all my guests, any 3 non-negotiables that you practice on a daily basis? Maybe more than 3 if you'd like to share, but
Three are good. So I am very careful what kind of energy I surround myself with. So it's very, very important.
oh yeah.
So that's a definite non-negotiable. So if I am in a place or with a person or anything that makes me uncomfortable, rather than shut down that feeling, which is what I used to do, which is what I've been trained to do as an Indian woman.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just you, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, the default
setting. I don't allow that to kick in. I'm like, if my instinct is telling me there's something not okay, listen. So that's the non-negotiable.
So how do you gracefully move back, shall we say?
The tricky bit is the gracefully moving back, as you know.
Yeah.
So if it's a place or something, I might just say I've got something else to do or whatever. And if it's a person, I will politely say, yeah, that was great. And I try not to rearrange another meeting with them. Or even if it's a work setting, obviously, you keep it quite short. There are ways to get out. But I think it's not so much the getting out that's the problem for most people. It's the trusting. Because women are taught not to trust their own voice, not to trust their own instinct. And we are born with instinct, with gut. Women know exactly
we
what's
often hear our instincts, but we don't listen to them.
We've been taught not to listen to them. Again, it's not even our fault because society sort of, oh, you don't know anything. That person, the man, the scientist, the doctor, the teacher, they know better.
Right.
When in fact, we always know what is right for us. So that's the number one non-negotiable.
So energy and recognizing energy and preserving energy.
And listening to yourself, I think, absolutely. Number 2 would be I try and meditate, pray every morning. I call it meditate, pray because I don't know what it is I do. I just sit down in one place. I have a little altar And I'll just sit there and I kind of just focus. And each day something new comes up for me. Either I'm told to do something or I think about something and I'm like, okay, that wasn't okay. So I just give myself the freedom without any expectation. There's no mantra that I'm doing or there's no meditation practice that I'm following. I just have to sit there and that's it. Light a couple of diyas and just sit there. And that's very much part of my life. And I guess the third one would be to allow flexibility and fluidity to myself, because again, we're taught that we must live in this one way, we must live in this one place, we must like this one thing.
Give us an example.
For example,
How do you practice that?
So, for example, it might be that, I don't know, London's been my home for 20 years. And now I'm feeling like, oh, I need something else. And so I'm giving myself the flexibility of going off to Kerala for 3 months. And I'm in Dubai, I might come back to Dubai. I don't know. So I'm allowing myself that freedom. And that includes even with the things that I do for work, as work in advertising. And I could have just carried on because that's what we're taught, right? You grow up, you get a job, and you stick to the job until retirement. And when the change happens, it's quite jarring to accept that, oh, maybe not. But I've allowed myself that space to go and become a podcaster. And again, it was really scary. I became I didn't know anything. I had to Google what a podcast was. And now I'm winning loads of awards and I'm in the press and billboards and all the stuff we've already touched upon. But that only came because I allowed myself the flexibility and didn't attach too much to that one, I work in advertising,
That's
kind of thing.
Yes.
And now with writing the book again, allowed myself the freedom and the space and the courage, because it takes a lot of courage.
Oh, yes.
To go into spaces where you know nothing.
Of the unknown.
Completely.
The fear and the unknown.
Absolutely. And starting from scratch.
And often the fear of the unknown also is attached to just the discomfort of disrupting what's not wonderful, but comfortable.
Yes.
And discomfort is at the precipice of change. So if you want to change, you will have to go through the discomfort. And that's the only way.
100%.
So find comfort in the discomfort of not knowing.
Exactly.
If there was just one thing, Sangeeta, that you could tell every single person in the world, what would that one thing be?
Don't let other people decide your life for you. Do not let anybody, parents, partners, colleagues, bosses, whoever, tell you what your life is going to be like. You decide what that script is going to be like. You decide who you want to be. You will decide how you want to be. That's what I would say. Don't attach to other people's ideas of who you should be.
Be the author of your story.
Be the author of your story. Well said.
Owning our story and loving ourselves through the process is the bravest thing we can do. A quote by Brené Brown. Sangeeta, thank you for being brave, because clearly that is making a big difference to a lot of us. Thank you. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute joy to be here with you in your home and be in your presence. And this has been an absolute joy. So thank you so much for giving me the space to tell my story. Thank you.